Greetings basketball gamers, and welcome to another video retrospective for Wayback Wednesday. I'm Andrew, and today I have a question for you. What is the worst basketball game ever made? If you answered anything within the past 10 years or so, then I'm sorry, but you're wrong. Oh, there have been bad basketball games during that span that you can rightfully criticize, but none of them are the right answer here. Now, if you answered Bill Laimbeer's Combat Basketball, then you definitely got where I was going with that very obvious and leading question. When a basketball game is bad, it usually still resembles and plays like the sport of basketball. The animations may be weird and robotic, the style of play not sim enough, the controls stiff and or contrived, but at the very least, it's a passable representation of the sport of basketball. And that's the main problem with Bill Laimbeer's Combat Basketball. The use of the word basketball in its title is almost ironic. Developed and published by Hudson Soft for the Super Nintendo in 1991, yeah, I'm on a Super NES kick right now with Wayback Wednesday, the game is a futuristic sports title based very loosely on basketball. Set in the year 2030, Laimbeer has become the commissioner of a basketball league and, in a nod to the rough play of the bad boy Detroit Pistons, has fired the referees and created a style of hoops that encourages violence and the use of weapons. Said weapons are in the form of power-ups that appear on the court and include landmines, homing missiles, and even exploding saw blades. Power-ups also include dollars, which can be used to purchase players in league play, and stats boosts, which increase your players' abilities. The only rules are out of bounds and backcourt violations. Fouls, goaltending, travelling, and other infractions don't exist. On the surface, this isn't a bad concept. Not every basketball game needs to be serious, and there's potential for some fun, casual gameplay. Unfortunately, the gameplay does not deliver. The controls consist of the D-pad for movement and the B button for everything else. When you have the ball, pressing B in the D-pad passes in the nominated direction. If you're standing still in the front court, pressing B will attempt a shot. On defense, simply pressing B jumps to block or grab a hovering loose ball. Gravity is a bit weird in the future, apparently. Pressing B plus a direction on defense will perform a tackle. The controls are simple enough, but that's the problem. They're too simple. Without separate pass and shoot buttons, it's very easy to pass when you mean to shoot, because you haven't let go of the D-pad quickly enough. When you fire a pass, you're not so much passing to a teammate as tossing the ball in the desired direction, and your teammate usually has to chase it down. This means that the game plays more like soccer than basketball, and you'll be throwing the ball out of bounds a lot. And once again, shoot and pass are the same button, so it's very easy to turn what should be an easy shot attempt into a pass directly out of bounds. Keeping with the soccer comparisons, there's no shot clock, and you can expect possession to change frequently due to the tackling. You'll find that the CPU takes the ball from you without much effort at all, but on the plus side, you can get it back just as easily. In fact, bringing the ball up the court or inbounding usually involves passing to the defense and then tackling them to get the ball back. It's easier than making a long pass or dribbling around them. The player you're controlling is indicated by a couple of floating arrows, but you can't manually switch players, so you have to rely on the game switching your control to the player closest to the ball. There's a map in the lower left corner of the screen that displays the location of all the players on the court, but it doesn't really help much with the gameplay mechanics being what they are. On the whole, gameplay is very slow, with irritating delays as the players collect the ball to inbound it, plodding around the court, and constant clock stoppages with all the out of bounds calls. There's not a lot of strategy either. Once you score, just keep tackling your opponent on the inbound and rack up baskets for the lead. And just to throw one more comparison to soccer out there, games can end in a tie. You've got the basics of basketball with hoops, three-point lines, and players dribbling the ball, but with a few tweaks, this could just as easily be a subpar soccer game instead of a subpar basketball game. League play consists of 14 games and no playoffs. At the end of the season, you simply move up to the next division, with the ultimate goal being to make it to the Super League. You can purchase players to boost your team, including Bill Laimbeer himself. To be honest, it's pretty underwhelming, what with the monotonous and clunky gameplay throughout, but the team names are at least delightfully 90s, including the Danger Dudes, Direct Action, Mecha Jam, and so on. Technologically speaking, the game is unimpressive. The graphics could be worse, but I'd suggest that the Super Nintendo's launch titles were more impressive, and I'd even argue that some of the later releases on the NES were as well. Obviously, it also fails to take advantage of the 4 new buttons that were added with the Super Nintendo's controller. Its mechanics, graphics, and presentation really don't stand up well compared to other basketball games of the same vintage. Having said all that, the game is at least playable, if not particularly enjoyable. I do think that it's a concept that could work as a fun, combat-oriented arcade basketball game, but the execution is pretty sloppy, even for the time. I like the idea for a flash game or maybe even a cheap digital-only release, but it's not worthy of being a full-price release, and likely wouldn't find a large audience today. Some old basketball games are classics and can still be enjoyed years later despite being a little primitive, but this is one that you can avoid unless the concept really fascinates you, and even then, I'd recommend giving it a miss. It puts the bad in Bad Boys.